All right, let's dive into Always the Horizon.
Oh, yeah, this one's a doozy.
It's definitely not your average philosophical read, I'll tell you that.
No kidding.
This Murdoch,
Right.
he's not pulling any punches.
Not at all.
So this book, it came out a few years back,
Mm-hmm.
and it really jumps headfirst into this question of European identity,
Big question.
especially in the 21st century. Like, where do we even begin with that?
Well, that's
And he's using all this symbolism and allegory.
right off the bat. He throws you into this graveyard,
Oh, yeah.
the graveyard of Europe.
It's heavy stuff.
You really get this sense of decline right from the start.
Like a culture obsessed with its past glories.
Yeah, and like prone to self-destruction.
Almost like he's looking back at history and saying, see,
Hmm.
we've been down this road before.
Oh, yeah. And he even brings up the ancient Greeks.
The Peloponnesian War.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what fools they were to destroy such beauty through infighting.
It's almost like a warning.
Like learn from the past.
Don't repeat the same mistakes. And I found it really interesting how he connects this historical example to his critique of modern nationalism.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like he sees them as two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, this primitive patriotism, he calls it.
It's so divisive.
It's like clinging to these outdated notions of national identity is actually weakening Europe as a whole.
It's holding us back.
Yeah, and he has this one line that really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah.
He says, "You saw yourselves as flags and countries, kings and borders, but never once did you see yourselves as Europe."
A powerful statement.
Like a call to action.
To wake up and see the bigger picture.
Yeah, and that's where it gets even more interesting.
Because he's not just critiquing nationalism.
Right.
He's trying to redefine what it even means to be European.
The bold move.
He's going beyond those traditional definitions.
The ones based on just like genetics or geography.
Yeah, where you were born or who your ancestors were.
Yeah, he throws all that out the window.
And he lands on this really abstract and kind of controversial concept.
Yeah, you could say that.
He says, that race is a feeling. That race is a way of being. That race is a purpose.
Whoa. I know, right?
So how do we even begin to unpack that?
Well, it's definitely a loaded statement,
No kidding.
but I think in the context of the book, he's trying to point to something deeper.
The shared mindset, maybe?
Yeah, like a commitment to certain values and ideals that transcend national borders.
So it's not about where you're from, but how you see the world.
Exactly. And to really understand what those values might be,
Yeah.
we need to look at the symbolism he uses throughout the book.
Like his alter ego, the sacred clown.
Oh, yeah, he's a trip.
Right. This character who embraces both the ridiculous and the profound,
He's always pushing boundaries.
urging us to shed our fear and embrace the future.
Yeah, he's like a jester philosopher.
A guide on this crazy philosophical quest.
And he's not alone.
He's got a companion, the writer.
It's almost like we, the readers, are invited to join them on this journey
Buckle up.
because it gets wild.
And then there's Aphrodite.
Oh, yes, the goddess of beauty and love.
But she's not exactly what you'd expect.
Nope, she's imprisoned.
Held captive in these towers.
It's such a powerful image.
I know, right? It's like a metaphor for the suppression of beauty and creativity.
And the feminine principle.
Yeah, like these essential qualities have been lost or forgotten.
And the sacred clown and the writer.
They're tasked with freeing her.
But it's not a simple rescue mission.
No, it's more about an internal awakening.
Yeah, they realize that Aphrodite can't be physically freed.
The real challenge is inside each of us.
To reclaim these values that have been suppressed.
And that makes me think about his concept of reckless abandon.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
He seems to argue that vulnerability and passion are essential for both love and life itself.
Like you can't truly live without them.
He has this really poignant example of an eagle with clipped wings.
Oh, I remember that one.
Even though it's never experienced flight,
All right,
it still yearns for it,
that potential is still there.
just waiting to be unlocked.
It's a beautiful image.
And it ties into his idea of mimetic keys.
Ah, yes, those cultural elements that trigger hidden potentials within us.
It's like that beaver encountering a river for the first time.
Instinctively knowing how to build a dam.
It's fascinating to think
What
about.
if we all have these hidden abilities?
Just waiting for the right environment or experience to unlock them.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual growth.
It's about the evolution of consciousness as a whole.
The potential for humanity to reach new heights.
Literally.
Because their next stop is the mountains of circumspection.
That's right.
It's a metaphorical landscape.
Representing the internal challenges we all face.
Our own personal mountains to climb.
And even the sacred clown.
Mr. Fearless himself.
He reveals his own vulnerability,
Yeah, he's afraid of heights,
which kind of ironic considering where they are.
but it makes him more relatable.
He humanizes him,
And it's through confronting this fear,
that he unlocks something even deeper within himself,
a primal rage,
triggered by a near-death experience with lightning.
intense.
He actually says, hate is born from the womb of love,
It's a provocative statement,
to say the least.
but I think he's trying to get at the complexity of human emotion.
How even seemingly opposite forces can be intertwined.
Yeah, and this newfound intensity propels them towards the next stage of their journey.
A decaying metropolis, controlled by shadowy forces.
A stark contrast to the natural beauty of the mountains.
It represents a different kind of challenge,
One that's more insidious.
more pervasive.
Exactly.
This city seems to embody everything Murdoch sees as wrong with modern society.
Suppressed art, the breakdown of law and order.
Manipulation through ideology and spectacle.
That's bleak.
And it's here that he introduces the concept of the obfuscator.
The force working against truth and the knowing.
This knowing seems to be at the heart of his whole philosophy,
It's like a deep, intuitive understanding of ourselves and the universe.
a way of seeing the world that goes beyond surface appearances,
Exactly. And the obfuscator is constantly trying to keep us in the dark,
to keep us divided and ignorant.
controlled and manipulated,
And the city ultimately falls.
consumed by this wave of darkness.
Murdoch calls it the nothing.
Chilling.
It's like the triumph of nihilism.
The loss of meaning.
And even though they escape,
They're forced to leave someone behind.
a lone soldier who chooses to stay and fight.
A poignant reminder of the sacrifices sometimes required in the struggle for truth.
And their journey takes them next to the suburban syndicate,
Seemingly idyllic.
but with a dark underbelly,
Another form of oppression.
this time disguised as freedom.
Murdoch's critique of American conservatism comes into focus here.
It's like they've traded one master for another.
And the consequences of this blind faith are laid bare in a truly disturbing scene.
Yeah, it's a tough scene to stomach.
Definitely.
This young man,
Yeah.
he believes he's sacrificing himself for freedom.
For the cause.
But it's a warped kind of freedom,
Totally. It's freedom defined by the Republican.
by those in control.
It's a chilling example of how ideology can be used to manipulate and control people.
It really makes you think.
Yeah, about the dangers of blind faith.
And the sacred clown.
Right.
He doesn't just stand by and watch.
He steps right into the ring.
He confronts the Republican head on.
This imposing red titan.
It's epic.
It's like a battle between two opposing forces.
Two visions of freedom.
Yeah, one that's based on individual expression and the pursuit of truth.
And the other that's rooted in blind obedience and conformity.
Exactly.
And ultimately,
The Republican destroys itself.
and those who follow it blindly,
It's a powerful message.
about the importance of critical thinking.
And questioning authority,
Never blindly accepting what you're told.
especially when it comes to those in power.
They might not always have your best interests at heart.
And from there, the journey takes them to another form of darkness.
One that hits closer to home for many.
The vampiric bankers.
This is where Murdoch's social commentary gets really sharp.
Definitely one of the most controversial parts of the book.
No doubt.
He draws some uncomfortable parallels between historical anti-Semitism and the modern obfuscator, which he sees embodied in these exploitative financial systems.
It's important to remember here
Absolutely.
that Murdoch isn't targeting individuals based on their religion.
No, not at all.
He's critiquing a system,
Yeah, a system that preys on the vulnerable.
regardless of their background,
Exactly. He's highlighting the dangers of unchecked greed.
and how powerful institutions can exploit others for their own gain.
It's a timeless theme, really.
And they actually expose a charlatan posing as an anti-Semite.
Oh, yeah. That part was interesting.
It further underscores the book's message about critical thinking.
And discerning truth from falsehood.
Because those who claim to speak for the oppressed,
Yeah.
they often have their own agendas.
You gotta look beyond the surface.
Examine the motivations behind the rhetoric.
Don't just take things at face value.
And this pursuit of the vampiric bankers leads them to a castle
Right.
where they face a whole new challenge.
One that expands the scope of the story beyond Europe.
This is where we meet Liu Bei,
The assassin sent by the Red Dragon.
a symbol of a rising China.
It's a clash of civilizations.
East versus West,
A struggle for dominance on a global scale.
and their fight with Liu Bei is brutal
It's a turning point in the story.
because it raises the possibility.
Of China inheriting the mantle of the obfuscator.
It's a thought-provoking idea,
That the struggle for the knowing is an ongoing one.
And the identity of the enemy can shift over time.
Right. It's not about demonizing any particular nation or culture.
It's about recognizing the potential for any group or ideology to become corrupted by power.
Yeah, by greed, by the desire to control others.
It's the fight for truth and meaning.
It transcends national boundaries.
It's a human struggle.
A battle against those who seek to keep us in the dark.
To control and manipulate us.
No matter their background or ideology.
And this fight takes the sacred clown and the writer to their most challenging trial yet.
The swamps of sadness.
The domain of nihilism itself.
This is where things get really heavy.
It's not a physical battle.
It's a psychological and spiritual one.
Nihilism is insidious.
It doesn't attack with brute force.
It whispers.
Apathy.
Apathy. It slowly erodes your hope.
Your belief in meaning and purpose.
And it takes on a very deceptive form.
Yeah, this young girl
Who constantly questions their motivations.
tries to convince them that their quest is pointless.
She keeps hitting them with those existential questions.
Yeah, like, what's the point of it all?
It's enough to make anyone question their purpose.
And it's taking its toll.
Especially on the atheist.
Who joined them earlier,
He's sinking deeper into the swamp.
losing his grip on the things that once gave him a sense of purpose.
It's heartbreaking to watch.
Yeah, it shows how even those who reject traditional belief systems can be vulnerable to nihilism.
It preys on that fundamental human need for meaning.
And even the sacred clown,
Mr. Positivity.
he starts to doubt himself.
He sees his friend succumbing to despair.
And he wonders if he can really make a difference.
He has this moment where he cries out, "If I can't even convince you, writer, how can I hope to convince the world?"
It's raw.
Vulnerable.
It shows the weight of the world he's carrying.
The immensity of the challenge they're facing.
How do you combat an ideology that seeks to undermine the very foundation of hope?
It's a tough question.
But even in this darkest hour,
There's a glimmer of hope.
right?
That little moth.
The one that appeared earlier,
It starts to take on a deeper meaning.
just as the sacred clown is about to give in to despair,
He notices it.
fluttering between his finger,
It's tiny,
Yeah.
but persistent.
a beacon of life.
In the midst of all that negativity,
It's like a reminder.
that even in the darkest of places,
Life finds a way.
and it reignites his spirit.
He shifts his focus
Away from the negativity.
onto this small, delicate creature.
It's a subtle but powerful shift.
It's like he's rediscovering the beauty and wonder that he's been fighting for.
The things that make life worth living.
And gives him the strength to remember his purpose. Why he embarked on this quest in the first place.
He thinks back on all the people he's met.
Their struggles.
Their potential.
It's a moment of reconnection.
A reaffirmation of his belief in the knowing.
And its power to transform lives.
So this tiny moth
A symbol of resilience and hope
becomes a catalyst.
for his own internal transformation.
It's amazing how Murdoch uses these small details.
To convey such a profound ideas.
And with this renewed sense of purpose,
He reaches for the sacred sword.
the symbol of his mission,
The embodiment of the Aryan spirit he's trying to awaken.
but his arm is still stuck.
Trapped in the thick mud of the swamp.
It's like a physical manifestation of his struggle.
To break free from the grip of negativity and despair.
He's so close.
Yet so far.
He's tempted to give up.
To surrender to the swamp.
But then something incredible happens.
What's that?
He hears singing,
Sing.
voices rising from the depths of the swamp.
A chorus of men.
It's like the collective spirit of those who came before,
Reaching out to him.
offering strength and encouragement.
And the song itself.
It's a blend of different European languages.
Almost like a forgotten proto-language.
That transcends national boundaries.
It's a sonic representation of the European continuum.
This shared heritage that connects people across time and space.
And it has a profound effect on him.
He doesn't understand the words.
But he feels compelled to sing along.
It's an instinctive response.
A recognition of something deep within his soul.
Like he's tapping into a collective unconscious
A shared yearning for meaning and purpose.
that unites people across cultures and generations.
And this connection,
This act of joining the chorus,
it's the turning point.
something within him breaks free,
He suddenly grasps the sacred sword.
pulls it from the tree stump where it's been lodged.
It's a moment of triumph.
A victory over the forces of nihilism.
And as he raises the sacred sword,
It emits a blinding light.
that transforms the entire swamp.
Thorns wither and flowers bloom.
Colors and sounds fill the air.
The oppressive darkness lifts.
It's an incredible transformation.
Like the very landscape is responding to his newfound sense of purpose.
And nihilism,
in her true hag form,
She's revealed,
shrieking in pain as the light burns her away,
defeated not by force,
but by the power of the knowing.
which the sacred clown now embodies,
It's a powerful reminder.
that the greatest weapon against negativity and despair,
Is the pursuit of truth and meaning,
and the atheist.
who had been sinking deeper into the muck.
He's revived by this transformation,
He's bewildered,
questioning what just happened.
but there's a glimmer of wonder in his eyes,
Like he's seen something beyond his previous understanding.
something that challenges his deeply held beliefs.
And as they emerge from the transformed swamp,
The sacred clown makes a bold declaration,
today marks both the death of nihilism and the return of the Aryan,
a triumphant statement.
but one that raises many questions.
What exactly does this return of the Aryan entail?
And what role will the sacred sword play in the next stage of their journey?
The return of the Aryan. Huh? That's a pretty loaded statement,
Yeah, it definitely gets your attention.
especially with all the historical baggage that comes with that term.
Right, you can't just throw that around lightly.
So what is Murdoch actually getting at here?
Well, I think it's important to remember that he's not advocating for any kind of racial supremacy.
Right, he's not talking about ethnicity or bloodlines.
Exactly, he's using Aryan in a more symbolic sense.
So it's more about a way of thinking, a set of values,
Yeah, like a commitment to truth, beauty, and individual responsibility.
qualities that he believes have been lost or suppressed in modern times.
Right, he sees the Aryan spirit as something that transcends traditional boundaries.
It's not about where you're from, but how you see the world.
And how you choose to act in it.
So it's a call to action.
In a way, yeah, it's about reclaiming a certain mode of being,
And this is where Aphrodite steps in.
that goddess herself.
She's not just a passive symbol in all of this.
No, she takes on a more active role in this final act,
It's like she's guiding the sacred clown and the rider.
giving them the tools they need to continue their quest.
So what does she reveal about the sacred sword?
Well, she explains that it's not just a weapon in the traditional sense.
It's not about conquering or dominating others.
Right, it's more about awakening,
A tool for inspiring others to reach their potential.
to join the fight for the knowing.
So it's about empowerment,
Yeah, about igniting a spark within others.
helping them find their own path to truth and meaning.
And she hints at other sacred weapons, too.
Like what?
The sacred paintbrush for the artist, the sacred computer for the programmer.
Even the sacred firearm for the warrior
It's a way of saying that every field of human endeavor
can contribute to the pursuit of knowledge.
and the advancement of consciousness,
It's not limited to any one profession or ideology.
everyone has a role to play.
And Murdoch connects these ideas to a larger historical narrative,
He argues that the Aryan spirit has been present throughout history,
driving innovation and creativity.
the pursuit of excellence,
He even brings up the Roman Empire,
suggesting that its decline was partly due to a straying from its core values,
what he calls mos maiorum.
the ways of the ancestors.
So he's not trying to romanticize the past,
No, but he's looking for patterns.
trying to identify the principles that led to greatness in previous civilizations,
And he contrasts this with what he calls the Semitic impulse,
which he sees as a force that has eroded these values.
leading to materialism and nihilism.
The manipulation of truth. This is obviously a very controversial statement,
Definitely.
and I know some listeners might be offended by it.
But again, it's important to remember that he's not talking about individuals or religious beliefs.
He's using these terms to represent broader cultural trends.
Philosophical currents that he believes have contributed to the decline of the knowing.
He's essentially critiquing a worldview that prioritizes material gain over spiritual growth.
Yeah, a worldview that's become dominant in our time.
And he frames the current era as a fourth Punic War,
A struggle against the forces of the obfuscator
who seek to keep us in the dark.
to control and manipulate us.
It's a battle for the future of consciousness.
And it's a battle that we all have a stake in.
Because, as Aphrodite warns,
The obfuscator is not a static enemy
it's a role that can be filled by any group or ideology
that seeks to undermine the pursuit of truth.
to exploit others for their own gain. So it's not about demonizing any one group,
It's about recognizing the potential for corruption.
the seductive nature of power
And she even suggests that the red dragon, representing China,
could potentially become the next obfuscator.
if the Aryan spirit fails to reassert itself.
It's a sobering thought,
Yeah, it suggests that this struggle is a constant one.
a battle that transcends borders and ideologies.
And ultimately, it comes down to individual choice.
Will we succumb to apathy and despair?
Or will we rise to the challenge?
Will we fight for the knowing?
That's the question Murdoch leaves us with.
And as the sacred clown and his companions emerge from the swamp,
Armed with the sacred sword and a renewed sense of purpose,
they're joined by the atheist.
who's been transformed by his experience.
He's still grappling with everything he's seen
But he's ready to follow them.
to continue the quest,
And the book ends there,
with them setting off on a new journey,
an open ending.
full of possibilities. So what do you think Murdoch's ultimate message is?
I think he's challenging us to examine our own lives.
Our beliefs, our motivations.
What are we fighting for?
What are the mimetic keys that unlock our potential?
And are we willing to confront the forces that seek to keep us in the dark?
It's not about easy answers.
Or simplistic solutions?
It's about asking the tough questions.
and embracing the complexity of the human experience.
If race is a feeling, a way of being, a purpose,
Then how do we define ourselves in an era of fluid identities?
it's a question that challenges us to move beyond narrow definitions,
To embrace the unknown.
to strive for a world where the knowing prevails.
And on that note,
I think we'll wrap up this deep dive.
it's been a journey.
Always the horizon.
A book that will stay with you long after you finish reading it.
Thanks for joining us.
And keep chasing that horizon.